All right, I thought we could break this down into just three simple sections here. The first one's going to be on the chords, right? So essentially we're working in the key of E major. Right, so that gives me this sequence right here, of course, 3 notes per string. And of course, we also have this C sharp minor pentatonic, right from the relative minor. Right, so now we have the key, which is the relative major. And then we also have the minor up here, the 6th degree kind of situation. That way we can basically start mapping it out, right? There's 1 and there's 2, a whole step up, 3 is another whole step, half step, 4, 5, 6 is going to be 2 whole steps, 7's another one, and of course a half step back to the root. The step pattern of the scale you're working in is going to become important because now you can assign harmony, right? There's the major, right? And then moving into minor for the 2nd degree, minor again for the 3rd, major 4 and 5, minors for 6, into diminished, 7 there, that's a nice one. Of course, then finally into the root again, basically an octave higher. Right there, that's all the beginning information you need to know. And you gotta basically be able to draw on that information insanely fast. So it has to be basically ingrained. All right, next on the hit list here is just recognizing the cage chords, right? The E types. They're in the open position then, of course, 3rd degree as a bar type there. 4th, maybe with the 9 thrown in there, of course. There's 5, dominant 7. That territory, of course, into the A types, right? There's a 1, there's a 7. Moving down, there's 6, 5, 4. Right, if I wanted to play this up here type situation as that one, or based on the C type, right? That cage system there is where all of that becomes more important. Because you're like, I make a connection, obviously, between these two here, the easy ones. But obviously, you can jump up immediately to this D string situation and just get that one done too, right? So once I kind of get there, now I can know what I can do. If I take this E type, I can turn it into the E major 7, like that. Or I can go E major 9, which is what I do, of course, right there by taking this root and moving it up to the 2nd degree, right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, right? Take the 2nd again. Now get the E major 9 kind of situation, right? I'm doing it again. Okay, so I'm just doing it in 2 octaves, jump up to the A type version. Again, E major 7. Right, and then I'm into this very simple sort of 2nd inversion major arpeggio as a major 7. Moving to the 2nd degree, instead of playing this minor bar chord, I'm now switching it to the minor 6. It's got more of a Hendrixy vibe, right? That's diminished territory all the way, right? So of course, in my mind, when I'm thinking diminished, I'm already going to go to this root inversion of the minor 7 flat 5 based around Locrian, right? When I'm hearing that sort of situation, right, I'm like, moves nicely to the next one, 3, right, which is going to be the minor 11. But you're getting my vibe there in my mind. I'm hearing this is diminished. And I was like, I want to just add diminished. And I did, using the minor 7 flat 5 from the Locrian position. Then I move up to the 3rd degree here, of course, minor 11. That's just basically this B major chord into the B sus2 chord. And then, of course, I'm just adding in this root down here, essentially the G sharp. Done. You can do it again here from the A. That's a little trickier to get the major 7 raised 11. Great flavor there. The whole thing all together. Very useful, that little technique right there. Of course, moving into the 5th degree, there's 4, there's 5, right? I use this spread sort of like interval where I jump way over sort of anything that you would get before the octave, right? So, again, I think it's a 10th maybe. Sounds like it, right? Then I do a scale fragment interval. And that shows you that you can hold down a note here and do a run where you sort of like hold down all the notes essentially where you can, of course, to create a run that's got like more of like this cascading. You've probably seen that on the net. Now, some people do it with a bunch of pick strokes like this too, and they do a bunch of chord changes, but you could do it like the Mateus Sasato way by essentially climbing up using little scale fragments like that. So of course I'm here. Okay, that's basically in the Locrian position there, right? So they're going to be in that scale. That's where I know where to draw from those scale systems, the notes, and of course, a very well-trained ear, which is the most important part. Make sure you're always trying to shoot for this. But notice I don't just always do a chord. Sometimes I do an interval to imply the chord so I can do something slightly different. It's not the same thing every single time. Sometimes I'm playing a scale fragment into an arpeggio. Sometimes I'm just doing an arpeggio. Sometimes I'm skipping it all together. Sometimes I'm doing a fancy chord. Other times, like when I move to the 6th degree here, I'm going to do the simple one. So again, I'm now down here to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here. That's going to be a minor here normally. So I can take that and just drop it down to this shell voicing, right? It's got more of a Hendrixy vibe, right? That's minor pentatonic territory, right? Right, so as far as the scale is concerned, that's a no-brainer type deal, but there's the chord too, you know, just very light. Then I just do a shell voicing again of this diminished, based on the A-type here, in this case. Yeah, if I'm playing in the key of E right here like this, then I have to go a half step down, that's going to be D sharp. Okay, so that's how I like to envision this stuff, just like that. If you have to be like, okay, there's E going down to 10, that's D, the one in the middle is D sharp or E flat. But in the E major's case, it's all sharps. That's why I use sharps. Okay, so there's that one. And then, of course, I'm just back to the root. Finito. So that basically covers the chords aspect. Essentially, I come up with the template. And then I figure out the harmonics. Then I start messing with the chords themselves, right? So I can sort of do this one. Maybe this one. Then again. That's with using all open E's in that case, right? Rather than me climbing up. Doing the bass note is now ascending, right? Of course, this one. And really should have been the major 7 there, but whatever. You get the idea. So let's move on to some of the scale ideas. All right, with respect to scales, there's no big mystery here. You got to know where you are. Essentially, if I were to move to the 3rd degree, right? So I got 1, 2, and 3. Okay, G sharp, essentially. I have the pentatonic scale based around this 3rd degree, right? Or the Phrygian mode, 3 notes per string. Right, or I have the classical method. Right, or I can sort of start to even get more messed up with essentially use, like, say, the harmonic minor. And yeah, I could of course do the melodic minor too, but you see what I'm saying? They're all based around this one particular note. So when I'm playing a chord here, I'm like, oh, that's part of the major scale there. See, I already knew that those 3 notes existed in the major scale, right? Oh, the Dorian position. Phrygian into Lydian, right? So that's why I can sort of do that stuff. I can already see those chord shapes. I'm playing the 4th degree here, right? And you're like, okay, that's 4. Or you're like, there's 4, 5. And that where does that put you, essentially? You're like, okay, well, that's basically into this Phrygian position, right? Right, so right there is really important. to sort of see exactly where you're starting from and then be able to utilize the various scale forms, right? So you're like, oh, if I jump up one more time, it's 5th degree. You might want to use the pentatonic. Or an arpeggio, right? So it all starts from the idea that you know where you are, and then of course just play one of the appropriate scales. If you're looking to get more exotic, then use one of the more exotic scales like harmonic minor or melodic minor if you're looking to keep it real. And then just use the major scale. If you're looking to sort of make it a little bit more whimsical, a little more bluesy, if you will, then use the pentatonic scale. And there it is. It's up to you to sort of be like, I want to do this. And then just do it based around a scale position, right? And yeah, you can combine them together. Essentially, if I took this 4 and 5, I could pair it up with this pentatonic, right? Those kinds of ideas are great where I'm borrowing 2 notes here essentially from this Phrygian position, but I'm also layering the pentatonic scale essentially with respect to the same Phrygian position. And of course, I can keep just adding the extra note on the notes on the strings, essentially where I have this minor 3rd configuration. So another great idea there. But it's the big reveal is that you have to know exactly where you are. If you're like, oh, this is diminished here, you're like, that's Locrian. Right, based on the A string. That's where that becomes very, very important. Then, of course, you'd be like, oh, that's essentially the 4th degree, but just me playing the Locrian position now, starting from the A position. You see what I mean? Because it's got this sequence of notes, except there's a shift. And then you're off to the races, right? So that's where recognizing things. And of course, you'd be like, oh, if that's the diminished scale and it goes with this chord, I've got this one here, right? I could do the classical method. Right, I can do 3 notes per string. So I think you're starting to get the idea. Once you know the position and you know the chord, you can then play the scale, right? So you're like, okay. Not my best, but I'll leave it there for today, right? So that right there is how you get the scales factored in, by immediately knowing what to do and then having a good grasp of those scale positions so you can start layering them on top of each other. And of course, just work at it. Notice how I choked there on the interval scale. It happens, and it's going to always happen. So just deal with the situation and just get practicing so that you don't choke half as much. Let's move on to the arpeggio section. All right, everything I said about the scales and chords is true about arpeggios, right? So it's about knowing where you are on the fretboard, you know, what position you're in, essentially based around the scale that you're working in, right? The scale degree. And then it's about quickly, sort of speed of mind, if you will, quickly bringing up the information. Is it, you know, if I move to the 3rd degree, is it a pentatonic scale where I'm like, right? Is it a major scale kind of situation? Is it going to be the harmonic minor? Right? Or is it going to be sort of like a chord, you know, this sort of like standard bar chord, maybe the sort of stripped down Hendrix one, get more fancy with the sort of more suspended flavors, right? Getting into the minor 11, minor 9 flavors, right? So, you know, that's with the chords, if you will. Or are you going to use an arpeggio kind of situation? You're like, okay, well, this is the 3rd degree. I have this 1st inversion major. I have a 2nd inversion minor. I have just your straight up diminished triad. Or symmetrical. Then I can evolve them up to the dominant 7 versions, which is minor 7. Right, or major 7. Right, or substitution, use minor 7 flat 5. Right, this kind of idea. I could probably do sort of combinations where I do extensions of the arpeggio, starting here in the dominant 7 based off the 4th degree. minor 7. Again, slowly. Okay, so that's me basically using two positions now, two different arpeggios. And of course, I can use the arpeggios with the chords themselves. So in this case, I'm going to do the third degree, but I'm going to substitute in this diminished because I like how it sounds, right? And the reason I did that is because you can hear the tension from the minor 7 flat 5 being resolved by the sort of ambiguous flavor of that minor 11 flavor. Okay, so again, very useful tension and release there. I could have just done the minor one, and I do the minor, and it sounds great. Right, I do it upwards in this case. Where I sort of... because I want to get immediately to the next chord kind of situation, but maybe I want to come down. I'm already on the highest string, right? So I'm like, okay. That can be a really, that's just the minor 7 there, right? A really great sort of tool to use to sort of, again, make your music sound a lot more interesting. Of course, you could do diminished over the second degree, the third degree, and the sixth degree. Any minor scale can be converted into diminished almost immediately. Great tip. Right, and then of course it's just, again, speed of mind. If I'm at the fourth degree here, minor 7 flat 5. Right, if I'm at up here at the Aeolian position, basically the minor pentatonic, oh, why not this E major 7 with the added 9? Right, so, and you could even say in this case I'm doing the third degree there too, but I'm just doubling up a little bit, right? So, you know, it's a bunch of combinations, or I should say it's a bunch of things at once, a huge combination of factors that come into basically using it. It's like you want to start off with the idea of a scale and a chord. Like there's the minor. And then your arpeggio. Right, and there it is. You're going to branch out from there. You'll be like, okay, I want to do something a little sparser. You'd be like, oh, that's sort of maybe pentatonic. Fourth degree. Right, so that was me doing major 7 raised 11. In that case, you're starting to get the idea. You're going to go up to the next position. You're like 5th degree already. You're like dominant 7. Or maybe you're going to do this version or... Right, done deal. And of course you can just sprinkle in as many arpeggios as you want. I would start obviously with the chords and the scales, but then of course do both. You could start off with, say, an arpeggio into the scale, then your next chord, right? And then from there you're going to do again another arpeggio. Another arpeggio. Major. 1 there, right? Of course, 2. Then 7. Then 1, then 6, 7, 5, 4, and 1. Okay, so me using a cadence there, 4 to 1. See how you got to be able to basically move around and know exactly what you are. Oh, which one am I doing from the cage system? Those were all A chords there. I could have done the same thing with the D chords, right? Taking them from your standard major situation to minor to diminished, and then starting to get into the dominant 7 flavors, right? Where you're going to use the E, of course. In this case, you're going to basically have to move up, or you're going to do it from this right here. Right? And then, of course, your minor 7, and so on and so forth, right? So once you get all of these sort of positions under your fingers, then you can start to layer up the systems themselves to be like, okay, well, there's my standard sort of D type there, and right there's my E type, or the C type here. Right there's my E type here and here. And then, of course, I've got the A type here, and of course the G. So that begins to sort of flesh it out, and then you're going to just basically do a scale. Am I doing a scale based on the G type here? If that's true, that's... Oh, that's into the, yes, Aeolian position, right? If I do 2 notes, it's in one sort of thing. If I just do 1 note, I'm now playing in another scale position, right? And making that connection to be like, oh, when I'm using this G-type chord, I need to know, I need to use this sort of sequence of notes, if you will, with respect to the Aeolian position, which is just going to be this. So then you're just... done deal. And of course, you can just start layering the arpeggios in there as necessary. Start with the triads, obviously. The notice how I moved to the first inversion there because I was not going to try to do the open position. I don't even know if you can. Right, so there it is. Job's done. I'm going to end the video there. I hope this helps. If you practice diatonically like this, I guarantee you, you will be 1,000,000 times better in just 1 year. One day a week, practice just like that. Next week, do it in A. The next week, do it in D, and then start to get more fancy by using fretted ones where you're basically moving between the A or the E string, the A string, and the D string for all your roots. Okay, so you're going to do 1, 2, and then 3 here, 4, 5, and then 6, 7 like that. Moving up using this scale system, of course, like the classical method, or 3 notes per string. And building them that way, and of course using your root on the B string, be like, there's my major chord kind of situation. When it's the 3rd degree, I'm going to be doing it in another way, right? That's essentially like the A type, right? When it's the 5th degree, I have to then use it in terms of the E type, right? So again, putting everything into practice, essentially with the cage system, knowing how the intervals play out, where the 1 is essentially, and then of course just start manipulating the fretboard and then basing your arpeggios from there. When you're like, oh, here's the C type like this, you can be like, okay, well then it's just, that makes my life a lot easier, right? And then you can just start joining them together. That's this one. And done deal. Now I'm finished. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate every single one of you. Practice hard, of course. We will see you in the next one.